How do you think the judge in the Trump case may be feeling about the comments that the president is making very publicly, dismissing all of this as a rigged, biased process?
I think this judge has learned to ignore that. He's heard Trump say those words over and over again for months now. I suppose he's put it aside. He said, this is what he's going to say every night. I know that. I'm not going to let it get to me. So I think he's able to push it aside. That's the best answer I can give.
Well, and that's what judges...
Although today, Trump called him a devil. That was a new one.
Well, so that's the thing. So I get it. The judges need to have a thick skin and just deal with the evidence and the case law. But there must be moments, aren't there, where a judge in their heart is kind of thinking, this is really making me mad, and you have to struggle to be fair in that situation?
Right. You do have to struggle to be fair. It has happened to every judge with a high-profile case. You've been criticized by the defendant or by the press, and you just have to develop the ability to put it aside and do what you think is right. So I think he's doing everything he can not to let it get under his skin.
Now, the big question for both of you, oh, Jeremy, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would just say, as important it is not to offend the judge, I'm confident, as we just heard moments ago, that the judge is putting it aside. My bigger fear is the impact on the American people that will believe the rhetoric and the lies and the misinformation that he's sharing and selling about how he's been prevented to defend himself, how he couldn't testify, how the law is against him. He's been afforded the same rights as everyone else, and arguably more so because of any defendant I have ever had as a client, and any person that I prosecuted as a prosecutor behaved as he did and has, he likely would be, or she likely would be, sitting behind bars a long time ago.
Yeah, but Jeremy, the problem is, I don't have to tell you this, in the United States you have, two large groups of Americans last night who watched different cable news channels and saw completely different analyses of what happened in that court. And some of them got a constant message telling them that this was a corrupt process. As someone who's devoted their life to the law, you must find that frustrating.
Frustrating would be an understatement. I find it really reprehensible. It really brings a visceral response to me. It gets me angry because there's certain foundations we really take pride in our country, and I'm sure you do in Canada and anywhere, any country that believes in law and order. It doesn't matter where it is, any state that believes in law and order, any person, that there's certain things you do and you don't do. And again, no matter what the spin is, no matter what he says, no matter who imbibes upon it, it is not true. He got a fair trial. We can agree to disagree about certain political background, but this is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. He was innocent until if and when proven guilty, which he was. There is due process. His attorneys filed all sorts of motions. He had a right to testify and decided not to. The gag order was very limited. So, it's just simply not true.
So I want to jump in here, too. Okay. I do want to jump in and comment on what I just heard. Of course, I agree that there will be many listeners to Mr. Trump's ranting and raving who will believe him. But there's no way to stop that, Jeremy. He has the right to speak, as crazy as he may be, as crazy as he may sound. That's one of our values also. He has the right to speak, and he can say all these terrible things, and most of us will not believe it for a minute. But you're right. His base will believe every word of it. It's hopefully the swing voters who won't. But I don't agree with you that somehow because he said all that he should be in the slammer. I can't agree with that. There was a limited gag order, as you said. He eventually obeyed it after 10 findings of contempt, and nobody found him in contempt after that for saying corrupt, the judge is corrupt, the system's corrupt. He's going to do that. And we lived with this guy for 4 years as president, and he said lots of crazy things like we should drink Clorox. Well, we couldn't stop him, but we knew we shouldn't drink Clorox.
All right, let me jump in and get to, the big thing that's coming next, which is the sentencing. So I'm going to ask both of you this question, and Shira, I'm going to start with you. What you know, based on what you know about the offenses that he was convicted of and the law here, what do you think is likely going to happen here in terms of sentencing?
Okay, so you're asking us to speculate and predict. So my speculation and prediction is he will get a short prison term followed by probation, what we call a split sentence. I think he will want to put him in prison for a short amount of time to say nobody's above the law and everybody's treated equally. So I would think at most it would be 3 to 6 months in custody and a remainder of time probation where you have to report to your probation officer every week, which is humiliating. Maybe not. Maybe he would do all probation and no jail for the usual reasons. First offender, older man. Those are the usual reasons, not a risk of repeating, in my opinion, not a risk of flight. Okay, all those things. But I think he will give him a short prison term. That said, I want you to understand that Trump will make bail pending appeal, and he's not going to be remanded from the sentence into a jail cell.
Okay, I'm surprised that you think he may get jail time, and I hope we have time to come back. We're down to the last 2 minutes. But Jeremy, what do you think is likely in terms of a sentence?
I think there's no incarceration, whether it's jail or prison. And in fact, I just think probation, as much as I don't want to disagree with the judge sitting or not, I think probation is very difficult for someone who is a former president or a potential future president, traveling, getting checked in upon, having permission to leave the state, having to transfer potentially to Florida. So I think what's called a conditional discharge, community service, a fine, which will be nominal. I think at the end of the day, you have to hang your proverbial hat on the fact that he will have a felony, and that will have to be justice, because that is worse than a scarlet letter in perpetuity. It just simply doesn't go away. So that's what I think the outcome will be.
So,
well,
Shira,
Jeremy,
I too.
I think Jeremy might be right, and I'd like to agree with him. It's possible. We just don't know. But either way, it's going to be bail pending appeal. He's not going to be on probation either. So there you are.
But
Okay.
Shira, I too don't want to
Yeah.
disagree with the judge, but I have to say, I'm really surprised that you think that President Trump might get jail time. The things that you talked about, first-time offender at this point anyway, relatively minor crimes, not crimes of violence, for example. And I mean, at some point, presumably the fact that he was a president and might again be a president, surely that's got to factor into this.
If I have 30 seconds.
Yeah,
If I
30
have
seconds.
30
Go ahead.
seconds,
Absolutely.
Okay, for rebuttal. He will not express remorse. He's called this judge a devil, and he's called the system corrupt. And the fraud was the fraud on the American people in affecting that election. That's a very serious crime. And there are statistics from your old office that many people who commit this crime do spend time in jail or prison. So he doesn't want to treat him any differently. He may do it to show he's treating him the same way.
And
We'll
Jeremy,
see.
last word to you, 30 seconds as well. Do you think there's any chance at all that President Trump might go to jail for these offenses?
Well, I actually, in theory, we're both in agreement. The magnitude of this crime, this is not falsifying business records to steal $100,000, and it's a first offender, yes, but it's to steal something far greater than any dollar can ever evaluate or come up to. So I think it warrants prison, but sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think this is a situation where, for the sake of the nation, building ourselves back up and moving forward as a country, I don't think that's the right answer.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I think the Canadian audience will really benefit from hearing your expertise. Shira and Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.